This is Tim Picciott with the Liberty Advisor, and today we are joined by economic historian John Sneisen, the Economic Truth, and also joined by Chris Karabats. How's it going, gentlemen?
Very fine. Doing great here.
Awesome Saturday so far.
I use that word very loosely, the gentleman one, so in case anyone's at home. But what we have today, what we're going to talk about is, I just saw this article, digital dollar reintroduced by U.S. lawmakers in latest stimulus bill. And so there we have, I forgot her name, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. So, I'm sure you're probably up there by Chris. Wanted to introduce a proposal to have the federal government issue $2,000 per month to residents by minting a pair of $1 trillion coins and using, I didn't even read this article ahead of time because, actually slept in for a change today. Didn't really do a whole lot of show prep, but it's like, oh my God, and it's good because
I'm dirty millennial.
Yeah, I'm seeing this in real time, so it's just great. So we have covered this before, but let's just have a $1 trillion coin. That's going to help do things. But then they want to have this automatic boost to Communities Act, or the ABC Act, and also brings back the idea of a digital dollar, describing the concept using similar language to a series of bills introduced last month, and saying no later than January 1st, 2021, the Secretary shall offer a recipient of boost payments to receive their payments in digital dollar wallets. Thursday, the bill read, and the bill was first introduced in the CARES Act, and then it was in the Maxine Waters bill that got taken up in the Nancy Pelosi bill, and apparently it's back. And I've been saying all along, this is just a trial balloon. This is like herpes. It's not going away. It's going to keep coming back and back and back until it's there forever. And eventually they're going to then marry this with who we just talked about earlier, Bill Gates and his whole vaccine program. And it's going to be like, if you want your $2,000, for now it's going to be $2,000 a month. Oh, by the way, you've got to get your chip. Otherwise, it's only going to be $1,000 a month. Or you got to get your proof of your vaccine. Or it's going to be $1,000. And then they're going to incentivize you. And then eventually they'll just give you nothing. And then they're going to get everybody on the grid. And once you're on the grid, they're like, that $2,000 a month. But also we've got, negative 5% interest rate. So that you've got to spend your money really quickly and forcing demand.
Yeah, you can only use it on FANG stocks, basically, when you get your...
Right.
That's the whole point of the digital dollar, is that, you haven't spent it, so we're just going to take it back at the end of the month. Yeah. Or, hey, you spent this on, gold. Or, hey, you went and bought some books by Ron Paul. We're not going to give you any money next month. And
you're on. You were saying that, what is it? Fans only saw like record amount of increases for their site. I've never been on there, but I know Chris you had some article that was showing that they had reached like record new heights. So maybe people are using it on people reading the Constitution on fans only, then they will rip that away from them.
Well, that must be also how it's going to go. I'm sure those people will start getting kicked off of OnlyFans or whatever that site's called now. I'm sure somebody listening knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm trying to get us back. I somehow accidentally clicked off of our feed. So I'm trying to get back so I can monitor some of the comments. But okay, so another thing we've got going on, that pertains right in from that article is Libra just made a bunch of changes to play more nicely with regulators. And it says the days of living, breathing Libra platform grow closer and closer and closer. What a big shock that, Libra is doing everything they can to cozy up with the big regulators. And this has always been the game plan. I mean, I did I channeled my inner Jeff Berwick, my inner Luke Radowski, and Luke, he is taking the day off today, so this is video 2. So, wish Luke well today on the day off. Everybody needs a day off. But I was channeling my inner Luke, my inner Jeff, and I was doing a walk and talk with my dogs on it was like not January, it was like June 12th or something. Bajillion degrees out here in Arizona, and I was like, listen, this Libra is probably going to be, the underlying composition is probably going to be modeled after the special drawing right, which is about 40% US dollar, 30% euro, 10%
pound and yen.
Yeah, the pound, yen,
and yuan.
Yuan.
And you saw the digital yuans now being trialed in 4 cities in China, right?
I didn't see that, but I have somebody knocking on my door right now, so make sure I'm not getting kidnapped. But if one of you guys want to, take over for a second, 'cause it's like right next to where I'm at right now. But let's go talk about this digital yuan or dollar that's going on.
Yeah, Chris, you're going.
Yeah, so the digital dollar thing has been going here back and forth. They're going to keep pushing it until it's in. It's just a rehashing of an old thing. I mean, back in the 90s, they wanted to give everybody a debit card that they could just deposit money into. So this is just a rehashing of the same old nonsense that they've been trying to do in the States for years. But yeah, and China is deciding to go full bore with this. So apparently they are trying a digital yuan in 4 different cities in China right now. So they're going full steam. China. They're going full steam ahead with that. And that's going to be an interesting trial. And of course, the thing will be that, we can't get behind China on our money, so we have to have a digital dollar too. Otherwise, they're just going to take off and control the future.
And there might be coronavirus on their money too. So now you can't use real money because you have to use, their digital dollar too. I mean, that's obviously that's coming.
It was one of the actual main points that was made in the book, The Curse of Cash by Kenneth Rogoff. And for those that haven't read that book, that's basically the policy that was created to how to eliminate cash out of existence. And of course, Ben Bernanke wrote at the back what a wonderful book it was. That when it comes to these digital systems, it could be a Libra that's like overlaying, everything, but that will only be used by banks and corporations on a multilateral basis around the world. And then we're going to get stuck with, our digital yen, our digital yuan, and digital dollars. And I think that's how it's going to work. Nobody's going to be able to touch the SDRs, which could be, printed into oblivion, of course. And that's what, we're going to see coming is they're going to, take our current currencies, and then they're going to just devalue it, overnight, like Argentinian style. And suddenly you sit with, 70 to maybe even 90 or less % of what you had before if you had the dollars. There was actually Simon Dixon, when me and Josh interviewed him 2 years ago. He had a very interesting point that I thought was, also another one. He just thought that the Fed would just create, their own currency and everybody would have a, bank account at the Fed. So I think that's also a potential. But with that, we could have the Fed doing QE for us and buy up all the bad debt and credit cards and so on. And then give us new reserves that are deposit accounts at the Federal Reserve. How about that, Tim? What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I mean, this has all just been one big trial balloon to see what they can get away with. And and when that bill came up, I didn't think that they ever meant to have that. But it's just amazing how quickly they can go from, we're just gonna, think about having this task force committee, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's in the bill. Because which means that they're getting ready to implement this, to roll this out eventually. We saw on April 1st, I can't remember the guy's name, but the former chief operating officer of Coinbase is now the director of the comptroller of currency. So literally, the head of the U.S. currency is now the former Coinbase guy. And so, I mean, why did they bring him in April 1st? I mean, obviously, this is being rolled out. It's it's going to be a bipartisan screw job. They're going to use and that's why the number one thing I've always been talking about with people is that crypto can be used for good or evil. All currency is going to be digital. Basically, no matter what, that's just an inevitability at this point. If you want to fight me, okay, already 97% of it already is. It might even be higher at this point now. And so, especially now with the Fed is printing, I guess, another like $2 trillion, boom, that just makes the percentage go even higher right there. But yeah, I mean, crypto can either be used on, there's one of two paths. There's going to be tracked, traced, surveilled, government. They're going to limit you what you can do. Or what's going to happen is you're going to go to like the more freedom aspect ones, like a Monero, just not financial advice, just saying that as an example of one that is obviously a lot more privacy oriented. And that's where I see everything splitting off. But people are going to say, okay, well, I want my $1,200, and so I'm going to go sign up for this digital wallet. And it's going to $1,200 is going to become $2,000, and the $2,000 is going to become $3,000, and then you're going to have two jackass political candidates who are going to be running, and one's the Republican's going to say, I'm conservative and I only want to have a $5 trillion deficit, and I think we should have $4,000 a month, and then the fake liberal will say, I'm the person, I think we should have a $6 trillion deficit, and we should give everybody $8,000 a month, and this is never going to end. It's just, there isn't two parties. There's one political party, and they're both communists, and it's whether you want the Republican, communism light, or you want the full communism, Democrats, which now what Trump is doing is actually even worse than what Obama was doing, which, I can't even fathom that from a political standpoint. I don't know if I answered anybody's question or I just went.
Actually, Tim, I had one point about the potential digital dollar and how it could fail. Actually, Ecuador tried to implement a digital currency back in 2014, and it failed by 2018 because nobody adopted to use the digital currency. So, we could all hope that, that's a potential that could happen. But, there's a lot of slaves out there that really loves, being whipped all day. So who knows where we're going to go with this? But there is a potential, and that has just happened. 2 years ago. So we can see that, there is a potential if you try to implement a digital currency that nobody uses it. And then that's, of course, the death of the dollar itself. If nobody's used the dollar, it would just hyperinflate and disappear into the ether.
Well, it'd be really hard if they tied the UBI to it, it'd be really hard for nobody to use it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So if they just say, sure, if hey, you have this dollar, please buy some and try to use it. That's probably not going to happen. But say, hey, here's your digital dollar, and here's $2,000 a month in it that you have to spend.
Yeah, exactly. That's how they lure you in, yeah.
Yeah, that's how they'll do it. Or like in China, it sounds like they're tying their digitally on to government employee salaries as well as transportation costs and stuff like that. So they'll be. China has the power to say, yep, you have to use this for that. So Ecuador doesn't necessarily have the muscle that the U.S. and Chinese governments do to force their citizens into using something, carrots and sticks and all that.
Now we have a question from Thomas Holland. It says, and usually I just take a question at the end over here, but this is one of the ones we actually did cover in the show prep, and I think it was from one of Thomas's actually questions earlier that we didn't address before. So thank you for the question. And he asked, will digital currencies even work if there's a large-scale CME, so that's a coronal mass ejection, or an attack using an EMP? Won't the whole digital economy be blasted back to the Stone Age? And so, Chris, do you want to cover that one?
There's a lot of tactics you could go to cover that. For one thing, people are prepared for this.
Let's just say Chris does have crypto bona fides. You want to maybe give your quick crypto bona fides? Okay.
I work with a crypto project called Smart Cash, another one called Bitcoin Confidential, where two blockchains handling easy transactions and completely private transactions. I've been dealing with them for a couple of years now. I have some experience in this whole process and coding and blockchains and knowledge of how it all works. So I'm not just saying theoretically, I'm talking about
so you consider yourself a crypto geek that you would know.
Yes, I'm certainly a crypto geek. There are far smarter people than me in the space, but at least I'm not ignorant of it and I know what's going on.
And they wouldn't be able to explain to anybody any of these answers, though. The people that are, a lot of them too are, like a Vitalik, for instance, there's very few people that can understand what he would be saying. He's far smarter, but no one can understand him.
There is that problem. You don't want, anyway, I could go off on a different tack there, but I won't. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ways. For one thing, a whole bunch of different ways you go. For one thing, EMP attack, worst case scenario, we wouldn't care. All our dollars would be gone too. This is not a hey, the dollar saves you if from an EMP, but crypto.
No, the digital dollar saves you. Sorry.
Yeah, no dollar saves you. If an EMP happens, you're really only caring about food, water, and lead. Those are the only real currencies that matter in that case for at least a period of time. Is
that because there's lead in your water up there in Michigan? Or no, sorry.
Not that close to Flint, thankfully.
Tim, you have to destroy it, doesn't he?
No, but
just getting the train right off the tracks. I have to. That's too much of a softball.
Too much there, yeah. It's Michigan. I need to leave.
Lead bullying.
Hey, you were trying to get over to Austin right before before the world melted down.
Yeah. Shockingly enough, people aren't buying houses up here right now. Who knew? But yeah. So for one thing, at a period like EMP, everything's fallen. It doesn't matter. Does not matter whether it's crypto, your regular dollar, whatever. Everything is collapsing, whatever. But the blockchain will not be destroyed. The Bitcoin blockchain is preserved in EMP-resistant places. I have my private keys on physical devices, so those will not be lost. You can actually have a functioning blockchain over ham radio or even by pigeon if you really had to. Yeah, all of this is entirely possible in the case of a.
I have mine etched into. I have an engraver and I etched private keys into titanium. So an EMP is not going to do anything to titanium.
Absolutely, and that's going to. The very first blockchain style thing was back in the Middle Ages in banks in Italy, and that was actually used to track the pilgrims, where the pilgrims make a deposit in Italy because they didn't want to carry their stuff with them because they were robbers.
Oh,
and
really?
whatnot.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I could go off on that for a long time. And that's actually the first blockchain style thing. Obviously, it's not a real blockchain in modern terms, but that's how.
Let's have another show, not today, but where you and John can geek out on like the history of money and all because I know both of you. I think with what you were just talking about with that story, maybe we can get into like Medici family and that sort of stuff. Would probably be an interesting show, at least for us and other financial geeks who are out there.
I'm sure somebody would learn something from it and enjoy it. So an EMP is not what you should be concerned about, because an EMP will take. I mean, not having access to your Bitcoin will be the least of your concerns in an EMP strike. Yeah. Absolutely.
But the thing though is that after the fact you could restore it with a centralized control unit like the Federal Reserve or other servers, right? Electronic server systems that current monetary system is running on. Those are in centralized places most likely, and I don't know if they're EMP hardened or not. And of course, transactions within that system. That's the great thing about the blockchain ledger, right? Everything is on a ledger, so you can if you lost the ledger yourself, you could find it somewhere else, and then suddenly, voila, you have whatever you had before.
And all you need is one ledger to repopulate, and it repopulates everything else. You need only use one person in the world who stored it in an EMP-proof, Faraday cage, and then essentially that has helped mitigate the concerns. But isn't there's people who've already sent these over like SMS text messages? You mentioned ham radio. There's really now to be honest, I have no idea how you'd go about doing that. If you're like, hey, someone has a gun to my head and says you have 5 seconds to go figure this out, I wouldn't know how to do it. But I'm sure if you get in that type of scenario, if I was in a room all day and you're like, hey, I'll give you $20,000 to figure this out, I could probably figure it out. But I don't, or I'd probably just call Chris and be like, hey, figure this out.
Transactions are easy. I mean, a transaction is just a text string. And you can send it over any way you can get a text string somewhere else. You could send a Bitcoin transaction over a telegraph wire if you really wanted to. I mean, this is not complicated. This has all been figured out before. People who talk about, will an EMP destroy all cryptocurrency? Like, no, I mean, people have thought about this. The people who work in cryptocurrency were the people who were worrying about EMPs back in the 90s. I mean, these are the same people who have been freaking out about this for a long time and have thought about this and have probably spent way too much time and effort in hardening crypto against this stuff as far as the value they get out of it. But it doesn't matter because that's the kind of geeks they are.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they didn't think about that with our electrical grid. So yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a whole nother thing that we could probably talk about for hours.
You could have paper wallets where each one could be 0.00 a couple whatever satoshis, or each one could be $10 US dollars at this time stamped in this certain date. Not that would really matter because everything would move. But if you had different denominations of these are 0.01 bitcoins or tenth of a bitcoins, and break them up into paper wallets or little titanium, little whatever you want to do, and then you could then give people sort of like a bearer bond, where a bearer bond, I believe the concept behind that. I don't even know if they even do those anymore, but essentially if you're holding on to that piece of paper, then now the Fed just holds on to everything. So maybe can I just create some bearer bond, say it's worth $1 billion, and sorry, it's a junk bond. Here, Fed, can you buy this bearer bond for $1 billion, or can you buy this junk bond on Tempesto Industries for for $1 trillion? Who knows? Maybe. And then maybe the Treasury could buy that $1 trillion back, say it's worth $5 trillion, and then use that to pay everybody's universal basic income. So maybe there's an idea for maybe Rashida Tlaib just interchanneled, because maybe that's not stupid enough of an idea for Rashida Tlaib. I don't know. I don't want to give people any ideas.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to go back to throughout history, we always have centralization and decentralization of money. And of course, that's happened in the U.S. several times, where you had the central bank, then you had, local banks or local, consortiums creating currency throughout history as well. And I think that's where we're hopefully heading. But who knows, there might be a little bit of totalitarianism on top before we really start to move that way, when people really starts to see how bad it gets if you're part of this control grid. But I think, in the coming, decades, we're going to, see that we're getting more decentralized in our monetary efforts. You might have even local currencies, local bases in local cities and all this stuff that are hopefully, people and businesses will use, cryptocurrency that are privacy based on those, potential currencies that would be floating around. So I have some hopes, of course, because there's, not always, the darkness that is, trying to push. I think they can only push it to a certain point, and then you will have, mass resistance at a certain point. And when people lose all their money as well throughout history, that also is a time for everybody to really focus and educate people, and that's what we're trying to do. So when that happened, you're not electing another, the guy that ran around and tried to conquer the whole world back in the 40s. So I think I think that is what could potentially happen in the United States and Canada and everywhere where you got, because they will use the opportunity of the chaos and all the people losing all their money, all this stuff to put their agenda forth and promise everything so they could get into power and then do their crazy nut job things.
Crazy nut job things. You were mentioning, tyranny, that they might ramp up the tyranny. I mean, I'd say it might. I mean, there's about 1,000,000,000% chance you're going to ramp up the tyranny before all this gets started. And we see Mr. Boston asking, how are you guys doing? We're doing great, Mr. Boston, and saying he uses Brave. And I use Brave basically every single day, except I don't use Brave on the live streams because when I'm going out through OBS and Zoom and have 1,000,000,000 tabs open and then also monitoring feeds, and right now it's all being done from one computer. If I use Brave for whatever reason, my the CPU usage goes up through the roof if I've got a bajillion tabs open. And I also use different highlighting apps that can't work throughout Brave, but I do on a daily basis. That's what I've got on my phone and everything else. I use Brave all the time, love it. I also use pre-search, but unfortunately right now unfortunately right now I'm not using Brave right this second. I'm actually using Firefox, which that's pretty good too. Certainly compared to everything else going on. But yeah, we do need to get hooked up where we have that Brave contributor platform thing. I will get on that, and that way we can because I would like to use that as an advertising platform too. I think it'd be be able to advertise my own business on there. Anyways, getting back to other crazy stuff going on. Outrage over bank seizures of coronavirus relief payments from debt-strapped veterans. And so we have basically, I guess USAA is saying that they're not going to, all the military veterans are not going to be taking their. So what they're basically saying is if you have an account, let's say you have a negative $10 account, and then you get hit with $1,200, a lot of banks have actually just been taking their money first. And so some places like USAA, and I keep wanting to say USSA, but USAA, which is actually right down the road from me, they will not be taking your money for at least 90 days. So if you have a negative, $500 account balance and you're a veteran there, not financial advice, but you should probably just take your money out of there because after 90 days, you're going to go steal your money. So you've already been forewarned. But yeah, so just another thing just imagine they're already doing that without the digital dollar. So just imagine once they do have the digital dollar, there's that you can bet your butt that they're going to be doing more of that stuff. We have a Wall Street Journal article, and I'm sure both of you guys could comment on this one. The stock market is ignoring the economy, and this is something I've been saying forever. I mean, since literally going back to 2010, I was saying you need to divorce the word economy and stock market. Those are two separate words. I mean, economy, I think, just actually translates roughly into home economy. And we have had people in the comments who have said that in past live streams. I know Ernie's talked about that as well. And, I don't want the economy is all about, how we can micromanage everything. We shouldn't have an economy because we shouldn't be micromanaged. We don't need Trump in there or Mnuchin or Barack Obama or Joe Biden in there, as the puppet master because, governments don't create jobs. Presidents and politicians don't create jobs. They do things to, help, ruin jobs or destroy jobs, but we need to be looking for decentralization. Anyways, Chris, do you want to, talk about the stock market ignoring the economy?
Well, it's always entertaining. Well, entertaining is not necessarily the right word, but interesting.
It's gallows humor. And if I do laugh,
humor.
It's like as we're going into the box cards over here, can we at least just have a couple laughs? At least Trump is good for some laughs, but okay.
Exactly. I mean, you don't want to laugh. You want to say it's too funny because people's lives are being ruined over this. So I'm not pretending otherwise. But you see these huge unemployment numbers followed by huge gains in the stock market. Like, how does that make any sense if the two are related? We've lost 22 million jobs in the United States over the last 4 weeks. And so basically we are now have fewer people working than just before the Great Recession. Another 4 million jobs lost, and we will have lost every job gained in the U.S. since the bottom of the Great Recession.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, we're only like 400,000 away from that. So.
Yeah, and yet our stock market is like, hey, yeah, cool. Today's a good day to recover on that news. That makes sense, right? No, that does not make sense at all. I think that's just an artifact of the Fed QEing to crazy levels. I mean, do you have the latest Fed balance sheet? Isn't it over like $6.5 trillion now?
Yeah, the official one is here. It's 6.36 trillion. Like that's their official number.
Yeah, almost $6.5 trillion, up from how much just like 3 weeks ago? I mean,
we're at the bottom. It was let's see here. Just want to give me 1 second. It's about 4.1 trillion.
Yeah,
so like think about that. 2.2 something trillion, which is just utterly insane.
Yeah,
like that if we go, sorry to interrupt you again, if we go to the financial crisis, it was $1 billion in about 3 months.
Yeah. So this is basically almost half of their balance sheet has grown that it did during the entire QE1, QE2, QE3, QE4, throughout all those years. In the last month, about half of that has been done by the Fed, and it's just going to continue. And so, yeah, of course, the stock market.
Well, technically, the last 107 years, if you go back to 1913, so it took like 107 years for us to get to one. I mean, it basically took the country about 98 years to get from 0 to 800 billion. And then to go from 800 billion to 4.4 trillion took like maybe 6 years. And then it froze for a while. And then for about 6 years. And then now it's taken, months to go from 3.8 trillion up to like, what was it? 6.35-ish trillion. I'm going to pull up John's repo report up over here right this second.
Yeah. And so yeah, of course the stock markets are going up because that's what they're buying. That's what they're doing is they're propping up the stock market. So of course that will become entirely detached from the reality of the economy because, that's where all the inflation is going. That's where all the inflation of the last decade has gone is into the stock market. That's why we've had gains there while everything else was flat. Is the big companies got their easy loans. They were able to buy their own stocks back. The Fed bought all those mortgage-backed securities and of course treasuries. That's why the treasury market has been going crazy lately. So it's more and more the stock market, the treasury markets, all of this is just play money. It's just all pretend, all completely separate from what's
And you've seen the memes where it shows the dollar put up against monopoly money, and it's like the same exact hue going all the way through. You mentioned mortgage-backed securities, and now Larry Fink was one of the guys of BlackRock, was one of the guys that pioneered that, and now BlackRock also is big into high-yield bonds, and now BlackRock is to sell their high-yield bonds to the government and not take any haircut because, we need to help save the richest mother effers in the world because, sorry that they were taking bets and then now own all the politicians. These guys...
Well, sorry, BlackRock. Isn't it BlackRock that's managing the Treasury's purchase of... Yeah, so...
they're using the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is the slush fund that... they stole. Actually, it got created by the stealing of gold back in 1930s.
I hadn't realized that's where it started.
No.
That's perfect. That is perfect. Oh, and that's what they're doing now. I mean, they had it going a little bit during the Great Recession, and then closed it up, and now they've opened it up again, and it's huge. It's buying junk bonds. It's buying everything. I mean, the stock market's going to go up. It's going to be full of fake money.
Yeah, and what's really funny about that is that they actually are, bailing like the 1.5 trillion that they promised in 2 different purchasing facilities. Mm-hmm. I think it's the PM and SMCCF, they're called. These 2 programs are of course what they're doing is it's a bailout. It's a TARP bailout, but it's 1.5. It's over double the size of the TARP bailout. And they don't care. I'll let you guys talk for a second, but I'm going to talk about some programs that Canada is doing as well now, because all around the world right now, we have so many different bailout programs that are happening. Bank of England is doing gilt purchases now, $15 billion a day. Everybody's getting in on this binge, and it's not, last time in 2008, it was mostly, the United States that did this with the Federal Reserve, but now every single central bank is just blatantly doing it all around the world in every country.
Yeah, and what happened in his, unfortunately, I don't have the chart pulled up, and I did have this my Enrico Poco speech where it showed, basically, we stopped printing, not say we, but, the Federal Reserve stopped printing money. It was right around like August, right around Halloween of 2014. Literally days later, the Bank of Japan started their program where they took, a keyboard, made up fake money out of the thin air. And here we go, fake money underneath my keyboard is hiding a Donald Trump bill. I'm trying to make up words over here, and then as soon as they started their program, they used their program to buy up their own stock market. So they were buying like 87% ish of like all their ETFs, and this is going back to late 2014, distorting the market. Then you had the ECB, the European Central Bank, start their program a few months after that. They never even had a program, and then everybody said in unison, basically around October of 2018, that the ECB was going to stop printing money in December of 2018. The Fed was going to, start selling $50 billion of bonds off their balance sheet a month. And I had been warning about this before I was on WAN, before I knew you guys had been warning about this and saying, there's how in the hell is the Fed going to sell $50 billion of bonds a month? It's going to explode the interest rate, and it's going to then tank the stock market. And so why are we listening? So why are we listening to all the freaking heroes that are coming in to save the day, who were such idiots that thought that they could actually get away with selling $50 billion a month, and now they're buying like $50 billion a day? So you know what? We don't need the mother effers in there who were too effing dumb to even understand that this couldn't happen, to not be the ones who then try to get us out of this crisis. And I know this is a family-friendly show, but it pisses me off because this is why people are unemployed. This is why people are dying. This is why people are going to be losing their lives, is because these jackasses that don't know how to like any of this stuff works, but they can't actually. And if they do know how it works, they can't lead on to knowing how it works because they know that they told people how it worked, and it's worked. You know how it works? It's worked to enslave you. The current banking system is designed to create high-tech feudalism, high-tech serfdom, and the second people understand that, the whole game is over. That's why Henry Ford said, if Americans understood the banking system, there'd be a revolution before the morning. Except I believe he said that in 1903, 10 years before the Federal Reserve was even enacted. And so what they have now makes that even look like 1,000 times even worse. And you want to know why I'm getting pissed right now? I'm getting pissed right now because everyone here knew that this was coming and this could have been stopped. But instead, and now I'm the one that takes heat for being, a libtard that doesn't support Donald Trump because I'm not a good team player. And then people are like, oh, well, how come you're talking about the economy? How come you're talking about all this financial stuff going on when you got people out in the streets? I'm like, the people out on the streets is because they don't understand the stuff I'm talking about. This is why. Yeah. And it's just so frustrating seeing that the same people who caused this crisis, the same people that, basically set the whole house on fire are now coming in with, a water cannon of gasoline saying that they're putting it out when they're just making it much, much worse. It's going to get way worse eventually, but when will people wake up? When their granddaughters are out whoring themselves out in order to pay the family bills? Is that when they're going to start waking this up? And you think I'm joking or being hyperbolic? I'm not, because this is the same stuff I was talking about a few months ago, and it's even worse. The response to this is even worse than I could have even imagined. Coming right out of the gates. Oh, let's solve a debt crisis by giving the banks a bunch of free money. Oh, by the way, we ran out of money for small businesses, but we didn't run out of money for the banks. Didn't run out of money for big pharma. Didn't run out of money for. We could always find money to go bomb more, brown people over in the Middle East. But don't have $350 billion of money for the Paycheck Protection Program. And by the way, if you do want to get the program, we're going to create a bunch of perverse incentives that are probably going to make you end up going out of business, or it's just all these unintended consequences. Now, I don't know. I'm all riled up now just because talking about the Fed, and I know that a lot of this could be stopped. And just seeing I think it was Jim Grant that had a title that said, "The Fed are the arsonist and the firefighters."
Yeah, 100% there. Exactly. They have created this problem, and we're somehow supposed to pretend that they're the only ones who can fix it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that everybody is like, oh, yeah, the Fed is doing all this stuff. Meanwhile, everybody else is doing it as well. Like, for example, let me go into some programs here that Bank of Canada is doing, just to give you a little bit of an oversight of what's happening here up in Canada. Of course, the numbers are not as big as they are in the United States because you guys are bigger. But, you have the overnight and overnight reverse repo facility, the overnight standing repo facilities, standing liquidity facility, standing term liquidity facility, term repo operations, purchase of Canada mortgage bonds, securities lending program, bankers acceptance purchase facility, commercial paper purchase program, contingent term repo facility, and the provincial money market purchase program. So basically, what they're doing is they are buying commercial debt. They're buying that. They're buying municipal debt and Canadian, of course, government federal debt. And then there, an interesting program that's here is called the Securities Lending Program. In there, they're buying asset-backed securities, which is a derivative like CDOs. They're buying CDOs and they're buying CLOs, collateralized loan obligations. So basically, all around the world, this is happening in every single central bank, and you don't hear one single little word out in the news. We're getting told that we need to social distance. We're getting robbed blind by these terrorists, these bankster terrorists, and these academics at these central banks.
Well, speaking of central bank terrorists, that's why I always refer to Bernanke as Osama Ben Bernanke, because I really thought that he did way more damage than Tim Osman, who is the actual. And yeah, I mean, it sounds crazy, but yeah, I mean, Osama bin Laden was a CIA agent named Tim Osman. Not even a conspiracy theory. Anybody can go look it up for themselves. But guess what? What's going to cause more destruction? The phony bin Laden story or Osama Ben Bernanke? And I would say Osama Ben Bernanke, everything that he started, which is all on the coattails of what Alan Greenspan started, which Alan Greenspan, if they had YouTube back then, he would be on a channel like this, agreeing with everything we're saying, because he is a complete sellout, was talking about gold and silver and was a big time, basically he would be one of us back in the 60s, or we'd be one of, but then they took him on to then basically buy him up and silence one of their biggest critics, just like Larry Kudlow. That guy's a complete whore, where he went and he was against all this different stuff, and then Donald Trump puts his arm around him, squeezes his bicep and tells him how cute he is, and then all of a sudden now Larry Kudlow sells his complete soul out. And a soul out, yeah. But here I was listening to Larry Kudlow at 14 years old when he was on CNBC, watching his show daily for like 4 years. And so you can't say I'm some like anti-Larry Kudlow guy. I just know that he changed his stance. I didn't change mine. And to see so many people that just sell themselves out, just really just pisses me off. But
yeah, some cash. It's all gone.
Well, speaking of cash and all gone, you're going to have a lot of cash to go buy a home right now, because Chase is now requiring a 700 FICO credit score.
JP Morgan.
Yep, JP Morgan Chase, and 20% down payment to buy a home. I mean, how many people out there have 20% down payments to buy a home? I mean, certainly, I saw a meme today where it was a husband and wife. They each had their $1,200 checks, and it goes, it was like the newest. What's that one show? It's not like Flip or Flop, but there's like the where they're going like buying the home on like E, or we're not on like the whatever the home. I don't watch TV, but it was that House Hunters. That's what it was. And it goes, it goes. The husband and wife each have their $1,200 check, and underneath it goes, budget is $3.7 million or something.
Yes. Well, that's the joke for that show. My wife used to love watching that, but basically everybody's like, I trim dog hair on the weekend, and my husband, grows tomatoes, and our home budget's $1.5 million.
Well, maybe he wasn't growing tomatoes.
Yes, I know.
Those are very green, pungent, skunk-smelling tomatoes.
Exactly.
But just think about what this means, that if you need to have that type of deposit to then buy a home, then that means there's going to be a lot, that now you are greatly decreasing the supply of potential buyers, while also greatly decreasing the demand, because now people don't even have, we've got more people unemployed the past 4 weeks than all the jobs that were created the past 10 years. And so that is simple supply and demand right now would state that it'd be a terrible time to go out and try to purchase a home right now. And I don't know, maybe that's a mortgage broker calling me and saying, no, it's a great time. And so, yeah, it's just, it's just so obvious what's going to happen, because this is another financial crisis brewing that's going to go into a housing crisis, and it's going to go into a housing crisis unless, there's some, I know there's been talks of more rescue packages, and somewhere, here it is, Mnuchin under pressure to help struggling mortgage companies. And I don't subscribe to Wall Street Journal anymore. I haven't probably since like 2010, because I saw all the propaganda. I mean, I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal from like about the age of 18 to probably like 28. And then I was like, or maybe 25. I'm like, there's so much propaganda in here. And who owns the Wall Street Journal? I mean, it's owned by Fox, whatever Fox, and Fox got bought off by other people. I mean, Fox was owned by was it Lachlan Murdoch, which is now Rupert Murdoch's son, who is a big time leftist Hillary supporter. And that's why I just love the Fox News crowd. I'm like, you guys do, America, Fox News. I'm like, oh yeah, who owns Fox News? A bunch of liberals in Australia that are friends with like Alexander Soros. So Rupert's son Lachlan and
England, yeah.
No, actually, I believe it's Australia. I believe it's Australia.
Yeah. You don't even have to go that deep. I mean, all the people who work at Fox News are donated to Democrats. 80% of the people who work at Fox News donate to Democrats. They're the same as everybody else. It's all just controlled opposition.
I think they're even worse than anything else because at least with like MSNBC, I mean, we showed in the last video, that Trump should or Biden should form a shadow government. I mean, there's such crap on CNN and MSNBC that I mean, anyone that pays attention to that, I just write them off. I mean, we're like an information war right now, and if you are still believing that bull, you know what? Then, or I guess Luke would say a bunch of malarkey. If you still believe all that malarkey. It's like we're in like a medical triage right now where we got people that are bleeding out, and if you are still that indoctrinated, next, I'm not even going to talk to you because at this point, we've got limited time, and I don't feel like wasting my time on the people that are too far down the rabbit hole. But the Fox News people are the most maddening because I feel like Fox News is the most dangerous because they're obviously not as fake as the other news agencies, and so but then what they'll do is they'll then like Judas goat you at the last second and like kind of point you in the right direction, and then at the very last second kind of Judas goat you over here and get you off like the wrong message. I mean, I remember it's like when they go, Glenn Beck would have like G. Edward Griffin on, and then at the end of it be like, oh, but the Fed's good or something like that, or have like a show on FEMA camps, and at the end of it be like, oh, actually this whole FEMA camp thing isn't really happening, or they have like Juan Williams. I want to watch Fox News, have it in probably 3 or 4 years. I don't think I even have it on my cable because I had Sling TV, and now I've got.
Well, guys, you're not up here in Canada, but in Canada we do have actually a state-run media that is actually paid for by the taxpayers to sit there and slave and then hear how great the government is. That's propaganda on it.
We have NPR. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah, actually, we do have also in Norway. Norway's even crazier because in Norway you have to have a TV license that funds the state channel. Actually, it wasn't. So this is how crazy it goes in Norway.
Now
so
they want bailouts. Now they want bailouts for all the media outlets too. I know.
But here in Canada we actually have gotten that. They gave that way before this crisis. But in Norway they have inspectors that goes around and then knocks on your door and wants to look in your house and see if you have, more than one TV to make sure that you're paying, because you got to pay a license for every TV that you have in your house. You got to laugh at these guys so that, people literally like still follow these channels that are, basically government propaganda arms. It's just laughable. But, why would we ever think that mainstream media has any good in their intentions by who they're owned by, right? So, it all comes back to make sure that, you take care of yourself and read books and go and look at the information from different websites yourself, because how can we trust anybody? Like I usually try to go to the source and actually find the direct source itself before I do anything with a lot of this media stuff, because there's so many lies out there.
Well, that could be kind of dangerous for the next articles we have coming up that you guys didn't know were coming up, because we have been talking for a while, so I think we'll probably end this soon. But speaking, I don't know. Do you want to go to the source, John? I don't know if your wife will like this one, because COVID concerns crush world's oldest profession. Demand plunges 80%, and yes, they are talking about prostitution. And not just, not by prostitution, we're not talking about journalists. We're talking about, I guess, the classic form of prostitution. And we also see from The Hill, some landlords soliciting sex in exchange for rent during pandemic report. So we got that coming out. And
good old bartering.
And then in,
oh, sorry.
Then in New York City, we've got, housing activists urge massive wave of rent strikes because landlords have gotten taken care of. Actually, this one wasn't about sex, but maybe I don't know, they've gotten taken care of. But I think what that one was showing is that if you want to go to the source to see if landlords, if that's one way of I guess barter is coming back. Now, will the government try to tax that transaction? So if somebody is engaging in that type of act, and let's say their rent was $1,500, this is the government going to be like, oh, we need like a 20% tax on that to get our tax revenue. I mean, I just gave them another idea, and now the NSA that's listening to this is going to then go over and give this note over to Mnuchin and be like, hey, we need to start taxing these hookers and all these landlords. But the landlords are it's just such a crazy mess of a situation. Well,
actually talking about that, if you go back to a cashless society, the number one thing they want is the ability to tax you easier by you being in the slave grid. So, of course, that's comes down as they're pushing all their agendas, and it's just funny. I think a lot of the economy will slowly revert back to bartering for a while until we figure this stuff out. Because some of us actually do use cryptocurrencies and so on, which is great, and gold and silver. But I think you will have bartering economy right now, and I actually see here in Manitoba that I live to as well, where a lot of people are just bartering right now because unfortunately they've been shut down. The government shut down their job because they're deemed non-essential. How about you shut down the government itself? Like, isn't the government non-essential? At least to me, I never get any money from them. They just steal money from me.
Yeah, don't worry. They're going to make you stop working, but they're still going to tax you to pay their salaries. So,
Oh, and what's really funny? They actually, we had the head of the government union come on here because they were going to lay off people because they didn't have, any money left to, pay their employees. And then it was huge upheaval. Who's talking? And they didn't even talk about all the people that were forced to be laid off by the government itself. It's hilarious, how the government comes out and virtue signals, how terrible it is that, they're getting laid off. Meanwhile, they laid off so many people in the first place. It just, infuriates you if you actually understand how terrible, their ideas are. And of course, this whole COVID thing has been a, perfect cover for all these totalitarian and the bailouts that are happening right in front of our face. And nobody's talking about it this time, where's Occupy Wall Street? All these guys that, we're like, yeah, the stupid banksters. You don't hear anything, not even a pip out of the, anywhere.
Well, because they got $1,200 this time.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, they're just the useful idiots. Don't worry. It's just like how all the anti-war left only comes out when a Democrat's in office.
Yeah, and you guys can go and get. I got a pretty sweet "Stop War" shirt from Luke's We Are Change store. That's on the Teesprings. I forgot the actual link for it, but I believe you guys can find it at wearechange.org. But it's "Stop War." But then if you actually zoom in like really, really close, it actually just says like Epstein didn't kill himself all over the place. So it's actually pretty cool. So I really recommend you guys check that out. It's a great way to help support what Luke is doing. But we're gonna wrap the actual show up, and then we'll get into like an after show with questions. So thank you guys for joining us for Change the News. John, do you want to let people know where they can find you at?
Yeah, they can find me at theeconomictruth.org, where I sell my books, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ? And the End of Freedom, and everything else that I do, all the videos that I put out. You could find, of course, the Federal Reserve statistics that I put up there for everybody to see as well, because or else you'd just be looking at charts and not really know just that numbers in the table somewhere. So I put that out. And then, of course, please check out my latest website that I put up, which, things are going to start happening soon there. There's some stuff around the world, but I think it's going to intensify, and it's bankrun.org. Go and check that out. It's a bank run monitoring service for people to, take a look at and make sure that they have information if things starting to happen around the world in banks.
Awesome. I also do want to point out that, that the two gentlemen on screen right now, that they are very prolific in our Discord group. And so I just posted that link below. So if you guys type in bit.ly/Tim John Discord, that will get you there too. And I'll go, let's go invite. I'll have the invite link over here too. So let me go share that on screen right now with you guys. But yeah, there's tons. I mean, that sort of has like a life of its own right now. So I really recommend you guys check that out. If you're into financial geek stuff. If you're not into financial geek stuff, then do not check this out. But you probably would not be listening, 50 minutes into this if you weren't. So if you're still here at this point, unless you just joined like 30 seconds ago and you're like, why am I here? But anyways, Chris, where can people find you at? I know you're big on Twitter as well.
Yep, check me out on Twitter at Zaphoid. That's ZAPHOID. Also check out my cryptocurrency at smartcash.cc if you want to have easy to use transactions, or bitcoinconfidential.cc.
And then do you want to maybe go in and maybe post that into the comments of different places people can find you, and that would be awesome. But yeah, we're gonna end that end the live stream now. If you guys are watching this not in the live stream or in the podcast, yes, we do have a podcast. It's now actually on iTunes. I believe I was told it's on iTunes, but I know it's definitely on Podbean. But we do have a Change the News podcast. If you guys are in would rather listen than watch us, and yeah, so maybe when Luke's on, maybe you guys want to watch him, and maybe because he's prettier. So if you only want to hear me, then you can do the audio podcast. But anyways, thank you guys. We're going to take some questions now. But if you want to be here to ask the questions, we will usually be doing this probably around closer to 1 o'clock Eastern time during the actual weekdays, and then sort of like hit or miss on the weekends when we have time. But anyways, thank you guys. Going to go right into the questions now.